During our weekly family game night, my fiance's father posed a question that sliced through the room like a blade. Why are you settling for him? My fiancée Jenna responded with a serene, almost playful smile. Because no one else would marry him, she said lightly. I'm just doing my civic duty. And with that, she placed her cards face down on the Monopoly board. I followed suit not just in the game, but in life. A month later, they were begging me to speak to her again. The irony wasn't lost on me. We were playing Monopoly, a game about property, power, and profit, while I was quietly preparing to lose everything I thought I was building. We were gathered at Jenna's parents' immaculate, picture-perfect suburban home, the kind of place where appearances mattered more than truth. Family game night was non-negotiable, a ritual designed to reinforce their image of domestic harmony. I sat sandwiched between Jenna and her father, Robert, a man who wore his disdain for me, like a bespoke suit tailored just for the occasion. Jenna's best friend, Madison, practically an honorary daughter in their household, sat nearby, whispering and giggling with Jenna over their phones. Robert, meanwhile, was meticulously counting his Monopoly money, as if auditing a quarterly report. He landed on my boardwalk with a hotel. I informed him he owed me $2,000. He sighed theatrically, peeling off the colorful bills with the reluctance of a man paying ransom. Then he looked across the table at his daughter, my fiancée, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, Jenna, I just don't get it. Look at this guy. He earns decently, I'll give him that. But he has no style, no pedigree. Why are you settling for him? The room froze. It wasn't the first time he'd made passive-aggressive remarks, but this was the most brazen, the most public. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, the one I'd trained myself to ignore. I glanced at Jenna, waiting for her to leap to my defense to shut her father down with the fire I knew she could summon when provoked. Instead, she smiled a slow, coy, almost cruel curve of her lips and patted my hand. Because no one else would marry him, she said, her voice dripping with saccharine mockery. Someone's got to take care of him. Madison erupted in a cackling laugh, shrill, grating, triumphant. Jenna's mother tittered politely. Robert smirked, satisfied, as if he'd just proven a long-held theory. To them, it was all just harmless fun, a little teasing of the quiet, unassuming fiancé they tolerated out of obligation. I didn't react. I stared down at my cards, at the tiny plastic hotel on Boardwalk. I felt no rage, no sorrow, just clarity. The kind you feel when a complex algorithm finally resolves into a single, irrefutable conclusion. For 3 years, I'd been running a meticulous cost-benefit analysis on this relationship. Her words were the final data point. The investment had gone toxic. The risk now catastrophically outweighed any potential return. I calmly placed my cards face down on the board. I think I'm done playing for tonight, I said evenly. I stood, walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. Through the doorway, I heard the game resume my exit, barely registering. They assumed I was sulking. They had no idea I was liquidating my position. Let me be clear, I am not a pushover. I am not a doormat. I am a private equity investor by profession. My entire career is built on one core competency: identifying undervalued or mismanaged assets, acquiring controlling stakes, optimizing operations, and exiting at massive profit. I analyze systems. I find pressure points. I execute long-term, multi-phase strategies with surgical precision. 3 years ago, I applied that exact skill set to my personal life. I met Jenna at a high society charity gala. She was radiant, beautiful, charming, socially connected. More importantly, she was the daughter of Robert Sterling, heir to Sterling Industries, a regional manufacturing company that had been in his family for generations. It was the engine of their wealth, their status, their entire identity. After a few dates, she invited me to dinner at her parents' estate. Robert spent the entire meal boasting about his company. The more he talked, the more obvious it became. He was a terrible CEO. He was coasting on legacy, making emotional decisions instead of strategic ones, blind to market shifts and operational decay. I spent the next week conducting a deep dive analysis of Sterling Industries from the outside. What I found was a diamond buried under layers of incompetence. Solid products, loyal customers, valuable IP but hemorrhaging money due to outdated tech, inefficient supply chains, and a bloated nepotistic management structure. I devised a 5-year plan. Step 1. Acquire the key asset Jenna. Step 2. Integrate into the family structure. Step 3. Earn Robert's trust and secure a seat on the company board. Step 4. Execute a complete operational overhaul. Step 5. Facilitate a strategic acquisition by a national competitor, netting myself and the family a fortune while securing my own future. Jenna was the gateway. The relationship was my cost of acquisition. I knew from day one that she and her family were shallow, materialistic, and dismissive. I tolerated Robert's condescension. I endured Madison's snide commentary. I absorbed every microaggression about my working-class roots. I funded lavish dinners, surprise designer gifts, weekend getaways, all while playing the role of the devoted, slightly overwhelmed fiancé. Every expense was an investment. Every slight, a calculated risk. But her comment during that game night? That changed everything. It was a public admission that she viewed me not as a partner, but as a burden, a charity case. It revealed she had zero respect for me, which meant I'd never gain the influence required to execute my plan. The core asset was fundamentally flawed. The deal was dead. And when a deal goes bad, you don't walk away. You mitigate losses. And if necessary, you launch a hostile takeover. They thought I was a pawn on their board. They were about to learn I owned the entire game. Update 1. The week following game night was a masterclass in strategic silence. I didn't mention the incident. I remained polite, even pleasant, but distant. I created space, a buffer. Professional, cold, impenetrable. When Jenna asked what was wrong, I told her I was consumed by a complex deal at work. True, just not the kind she imagined. The deal was the systematic dismantling of her family's empire. They mistook my silence for weakness. I overheard Jenna on the phone with Madison. He's in one of his moods again. I'll just cheer him up with a shopping spree. They thought I was a simple creature, easily pacified with luxury goods. Their arrogance was their Achilles heel, and I intended to drive the blade deep. First, I secured my personal position. Jenna and I lived in a condo I owned outright. She'd moved in 2 years prior. One Saturday, while she was brunching with Madison, I meticulously documented every item in the apartment, photographing, cataloging, separating what was mine, what was hers, what was jointly acquired. Then I met with a lawyer, a specialist in high-conflict divorces and corporate litigation. He reviewed my documentation and the prenuptial agreement Jenna had laughed at but signed. The prenup was airtight. It shielded all my pre-existing assets, my condo, my portfolio, my liquidity. Legally disengaging from Jenna would be clean, swift, and final. Next, I turned to Sterling Industries. For the past year, I'd been quietly collecting internal data. Robert, in his hubris, often asked me to review financial reports seeking validation for his brilliance. I saved every document. I knew their suppliers, their clients, their debt ratios, their operational choke points, better than he did. Now it was time to weaponize that knowledge. Sterling's greatest vulnerability? Its dependence on a single supplier, Apex Materials, for a critical raw material. Robert's relationship with Apex's owner was built on golf outings and steak dinners, not contracts or contingencies. Meanwhile, I knew Apex was under financial pressure, seeking more stable, profitable partnerships. I leveraged my network. I arranged a meeting with Apex's CEO posing as a representative of another portfolio company. I offered him a 3-year contract, 10 above Sterling's current rate, guaranteed volumes, and payment terms twice as favorable. He signed immediately. Then he sent Robert the standard 60-day termination notice. Robert didn't know it yet, but the engine of his company had just been yanked out. Sterling's second pillar. their largest client, a national retail chain, accounting for 40% of revenue. I knew from Robert's own reports that Sterling was chronically late on deliveries and their quality control was deteriorating. The client was unhappy, but inert switching manufacturers was a hassle. I removed the hassle. I compiled an anonymous dossier, late delivery stats, defect rates, cash flow analysis. I couriered it to the client's head of procurement, along with a curated list of 3 alternative manufacturers. All 3 companies I held silent stakes in. I wasn't just sinking Sterling's ship. I was rerouting their lifeboats to my own fleet. Meanwhile, I handled my personal exit. I leased a new, larger condo. Scheduled movers for a day, I knew Jenna and Madison would be at an all-day influencer brunch. The final piece? Our wedding. 4 months away. Deposits paid. Venue booked. Caterer hired. The biggest expense? The historic hotel ballroom, $50,000 non-refundable deposit paid from our joint wedding account. I called the hotel's event coordinator. Due to unforeseen circumstances, we must cancel the wedding, I said. She expressed sympathy, but reminded me the deposit was forfeit. I understand, I replied, but I don't want to cancel. I want to repurpose the booking, convert it from a wedding reception to a corporate awards gala for one of my firms. Same date, same budget, same contract holder me. The Jenna and Alex wedding became the Vanguard Capital Annual Achievement Gala. All traps were set. All timers were ticking. Jenna remained oblivious, flipping through bridal magazines, fretting over flower arrangements, debating dress colors with Madison. One evening, she tossed a stack of magazines onto the coffee table. It's so much work, she sighed. Sometimes I feel like you don't appreciate everything I'm doing to plan our future. I nodded. I'm sure it's very stressful. The beautiful, clueless architect of her own ruin. The system was primed. The collapse was inevitable. Update 2. The first tremor hit Robert 10 days after my meeting with Apex. Jenna came home frantic. Robert had called apoplectic. Apex had sent the termination letter. He couldn't fathom why his old friend would betray him. Blame the economy, the government, everything except his own negligence. Dad's so stressed, Jenna fretted, pacing. He says this could destroy the company. Can you believe it? After 30 years of loyalty. I offered vague sympathies. Inside, I felt the icy thrill of a plan executing flawlessly. Without Apex, Sterling's production would halt in 60 days. Finding a replacement at competitive rates? Nearly impossible. A week later, the second blow landed. Their biggest client sent a formal notice. Account under review due to persistent supply chain and quality control failures. The letter cited specific metrics. I recognized my own dossier's fingerprints. Panic set in. Robert called an emergency family meeting and demanded I attend. He actually believed my finance brain could magically undo decades of his incompetence. The atmosphere at their house was thick with dread. Robert looked aged. Jenna and her mother fluttered around him like anxious birds. He laid out the crisis, voice trembling between fury and fear. It's a coordinated attack, he hissed. Someone's trying to destroy me. He turned to me, eyes desperate. Alex, you understand this world. What do I do? This was the moment I'd engineered. I adopted my boardroom persona, calm, analytical, detached. Robert, based on what you've shown me, the company is facing systemic collapse. You've lost your primary supplier. You're losing your primary client. Cash flow is negative. The situation is critical. I walked him through his options, all catastrophic. New supplier, costly, slow. Appease the client, no leverage, secure a loan. No bank would touch him. Then I sprung the trap. There is one alternative, I said, pausing for effect. You could seek a private investor, someone with capital and expertise to execute a turnaround. It would mean surrendering controlling interest, but it's better than bankruptcy. Hope flickered in Robert's eyes. Do you know someone? I might, I said. Let me make some calls. The investor, of course, was me via a shell corporation. My plan was never destruction. It was acquisition. I intended to buy their failure for pennies. Meanwhile, my personal exit proceeded on schedule. On the day of the influencer brunch, the moment Jenna and Madison left dressed like extras in a fashion ad, I summoned the movers. In 4 hours, every trace of me was gone. I left Jenna's belongings untouched, but the emptiness screamed. On the kitchen island, my keys, a printed copy of the prenup, and a cashier's check for half the wedding fund, plus a letter. Jenna, our engagement is terminated. As you can see, I have vacated the premises. Per our prenuptial agreement, all individual assets remain separate. Enclosed is your share of the wedding fund. All other deposits and bookings were made under my name and are now my sole property. Any further communication must be directed to my attorney. Details below. Alex. I drove to my new condo. Unpacked. That evening, my phone exploded Jenna's texts. Monster. Coward. Thief. Madison's threats. I'll ruin you online. I screenshot everything, blocked them both. The silence was euphoric. The next day, Robert called, voice a guttural snarl. What is this? You can't just leave my daughter. We have a wedding. I need your help with the business. Robert, I said, ice in my tone, the engagement is over. As for the business, my investor offer still stands, but it's purely professional. The price? 51 ownership transferred to my investment group. You have 48 hours. After that, the offer vanishes. I could hear him choking on his own fury. He had no leverage, no alternatives. It was surrender or annihilation. Checkmate was imminent. Final update. 3 months have passed since I activated my endgame. The fallout was as devastating as I engineered it to be. Robert, cornered and desperate, signed over 51 of Sterling Industries to my holding company, never realizing he was handing me the keys to his kingdom. The day the deal closed, I walked into the Sterling boardroom, introduced myself as majority owner, and fired him. His entire management team followed. The look on his face, shock, horror, dawning comprehension, was priceless, worth more than money. I immediately implemented my turnaround plan, renegotiated a temporary supply deal with Apex at a premium, which I gladly paid. Flew out to meet the retail client, presented my operational overhaul, offered them a 6-month discount as goodwill. They stayed. Under my leadership, Sterling stabilized. In 1 year, profits will double. In 2, I'll sell it for 9 figures. Their personal collapse was equally total. Without my financial cushion, Jenna couldn't afford the condo. Moved back in with her parents. Robert, stripped of a title and purpose, suffered a breakdown. Their mansion? Listed to cover debts. Jenna's social circle evaporated. Madison and the brunch crew vanished friendships, built on transactional luxury, now bankrupt. Madison tried to smear me online. My lawyer sent a cease and desist so ferocious, she deleted her entire social media presence. A month after I left, the pleas began. First, Jenna's mother begging me to be reasonable, to talk to Jenna, to help Robert. Then Jenna herself, tearful voicemails. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. It was just a joke. I love you. The script was predictable, pathetic. They convinced a family friend to reach out, asking if I'd just talk to her again. I agreed to one final meeting. We met at a neutral coffee shop. Jenna and Robert were there, haggard, defeated. Robert spoke first, apologized, admitted he'd misjudged me, begged for any role, even consultant. Then Jenna crying, pleading. I'm lost without you. Can we start over? I'll do anything. I let them finish. Took a slow sip of coffee, looked them each in the eye. You're operating under a fundamental misconception, I said. You think this was about hurt feelings? That an apology can fix it? It can't. I turned to Robert. This was a business transaction. I identified a failing asset and executed a plan to acquire it. Your disrespect proved you were an unreliable partner. So I pivoted from merger to hostile takeover. You didn't lose your company because I was angry. You lost it because you were a terrible CEO. Then to Jenna, you weren't my fiancée. You were my cost of acquisition, the price I paid to access the real asset. But your comment revealed a fatal flaw. You had zero value as a partner. You were a bad investment. So, I cut my losses. I stood. Their faces were ghostly pale. They stared at me like I was a stranger. In a way, I was. They'd never seen the real me, only the character I played. Nay, I hope you both learn from this, I said, leaving a 20 bill for the coffee. Always know the true value of your assets, and never, ever underestimate your competition. I walked out, didn't look back. Last I heard, Robert and his wife are downsizing to a rental. Jenna took a low-tier office job. They lost everything. And I gained control of an empire. Game over. I won.